But I'm also pissed at the people in this 83%, because those elected officials and that gun lobby couldn't do what they've done if the people in that 83% actually cared enough to stop them. The people who make these laws have no excuse for the things they have done. And the members of that 83% of Republicans and gun owners who oppose things like permitless carry have no excuse for the things they haven't done.
Let's talk bona fides for a minute. I have worked with the Republican Party of Illinois, with the Democratic Party of Illinois, and with the Green Party of Illinois at various different points in my life. I decided to stop working with the Republican Party of Illinois in 2013 when Mitch McConnell decided that he would rather have the country literally fall apart than have the country pay for some people's health care. I am, as of moment, a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialists of America. Here's my card. I have worked with the Faith Coalition for the Common Good, a subsidiary of Gamaliel. I have worked with the Springfield branch of Indivisible. I have worked with the Springfield branch of Black Lives Matter. And I have worked with maybe a dozen other orgs that I do not remember the names of or what they did specifically. I even worked with the People's Party before they turned into fascists and kicked out all of their black and trans members. I have confronted both Democratic and Republican elected officials, both on and off camera. I have attended city council meetings, attended virtual hearings for the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. I have been kicked out of gubernatorial press conferences. I have attended over 1,000 political rallies, marches, and other political actions across the city in the past 10 years. When a group of people walked all the way from Chicago to Springfield in an attempt to speak to Governor Rauner, who shut them out, and then they had to sit in front of his office, I managed to bumble my way into that and participate in that. During the George Floyd protests, the police pointed a howitzer at my chest. Yes, a howitzer. On top of an MRAP. Video used to exist of it on Facebook, but it keeps getting taken down. So when Steve Shive says... Hold on.
I'm also pissed at the people in this 83%, because those elected officials and that gun lobby couldn't do what they've done if the people in that 83% actually cared enough to stop them.
He's talking about me. He is talking to me, and he is talking about me, although he is not talking to me specifically or about me specifically. I am, however, the kind of person that he is admonishing. And as one of those people, I feel like I want to respond. But first, I want to be very clear about what the goal of this video is. And to be very clear, I will not condone harassment, unless that harassment is being done to an elected official, an unelected state bureaucrat, or a corporate owner or shareholder. I do not desire and will not condone the harassment of Steve Shives. And in fact, I will become quite irate if I find out that anyone who watches this video, or anyone who watches any of my other videos, interprets this video as condoning that. If you watch this video and you think to yourself, well, Ron wants me to go take a dump on Steve Shives' comment section, then you have watched this video wrong. Stop it. If you want to go and harass someone, go find Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, and ask him if his bloodlust and hatred of Latinx people is so overwhelming that he can't stop himself from killing a woman who watched her child die. You have my permission to do that, if you needed it. Melissa Lusso is innocent. And that's not going to be enough to save her, because Greg Abbott and the Republican Party love watching poor people die. Just wanted to throw that out there. Also, go watch Professor Flower's video on this topic if you want to learn more. I also want to make it clear that this video is not intended to be, let's say an active dialogue. I am under no pretext that Shives has the time or inclination to watch this video, no matter how long or short it ends up being. I am under no pretext that Shives has the time or inclination to watch this video, because I am under no pretext that Shives has the time or inclination to sort this video out from the dozens of harassing videos that he receives every single day. Steve Shives does not owe me anything, and I know that. Consequently, I am not going to pretend that I am responding to Shives directly. I'm going to be arguing against Shives' arguments, which I find to be shallow and offensive for reasons that I hope to articulate. And while I find those arguments to be shallow and offensive, I want to make it clear that I am not admonishing Shives himself. A good person, be it him or me, can have bad arguments, and good people can disagree on things in good faith. I don't even disagree with his take on guns, in that I don't believe that it's beyond the pale to require gun owners to have licenses for their guns, the same way that you would have licenses for people who have cars. What I disagree with, and what I find offensive, is how he suggests we get there. So, to recap Shive's video, which I will have in the description, Shives doesn't like open carry laws. A perfectly reasonable position, and one that I happen to agree with. He explains, in an admonishing tone, what constitutional carry means, and lists all the states that practice open carry. Shives explains that deaths due to gun violence are on the rise, and that elected officials don't care about that because they are fucking ghouls. His words, not mine, although I do agree with his assessment. He goes on to explain that not only do most Americans not want open carry, but also most Republicans and even most gun owners do not want open carry, so there is no reason for this practice to exist other than appealing to gun lobbyists and their sycophants. Up to this point, about 4 minutes and 40 seconds into the video, I agree with him. And then he does something that offends me. Steve says that the way that we fix this problem is by voting. He then goes on to admonish both Republicans and people who don't vote for Democrats otherwise for not doing enough to stop gun violence. He then, hilariously, suggests that Republicans who want gun reform should vote for Democrats, and that Democrats should vote for more Democratic Democrats, and that we need to push Democrats more. To clarify a point, I need to stress again that I am one of the people that Shives is talking about here. I'm an anarchist. It's in the name. And in the same way that I refused to work with Republicans after Mitch McConnell pulled his trousers down and shat all over the Senate floor in 2013, I have refused to work with the Democrats since 2019, when a major Democratic official for the state of Illinois, a major official but also an unelected bureaucrat, told me that the reason we don't have better people to vote for is because regular people are too busy fucking their cousins to go out and vote. His words verbatim. If Shives is admonishing people for being politically active and not doing enough to put Democrats into office, which he is, then he is necessarily admonishing me as well. To illustrate my point, let's talk about Brett Kavanaugh for a minute, if you're willing to indulge me. Brett Kavanaugh lied to Congress. Not about the woman he raped, or at least not just about the woman that he raped. I know that because I watched the entire Brett Kavanaugh media circus from day one, hour one. I made a whole ass video about it back in 2018 where I suggested that the Democrats could and would impeach Brett Kavanaugh even if he was accepted onto the Supreme Court. They all but said, in a very straightforward way, they stopped right at the line of saying that if he was nominated, they would immediately move to impeach him. They did not. Impeach him, that is. I'll say that again for the people in the back. The Democrats could have responded to Brett Kavanaugh's acceptance under the Supreme Court by impeaching him on day one for lying under oath. They were so sure of this fact that they brought it up days before the information about him and the women that he raped was made public. The Democrats can, in fact, still, at any point, at any second, impeach Brett Kavanaugh for lying under oath. Not just about Saddam Hussein, but also about all the women that he allegedly raped. The senator who represents me, Dick Durbin, went so far as to ask Kavanaugh if he knew what the penalty for lying under oath was. That's one of the reasons I was so visibly excited in this video that I made. And all of that came out to nothing. I asked Durbin about this during an event in 2020, and he told me something along the lines of him feeling it was better to pursue effective political policy and work for the American people than pursue petty political grudges. And while that sounds fine out of context, let's remember who we're talking about and why we're talking about him. Brett Kavanaugh is not just a Republican. He's a judge who has stated that fundamental aspects of the Constitution, especially aspects meant to control the power of the president, are unconstitutional. There are serious enough concerns that he has lied to Congress and that it was brought up during his confirmation hearing. And then there's the half a dozen women that he allegedly raped. Those concerns have nothing to do with his political affiliation and everything to do with his veracity as a judge. Not only that, but even if the sentiment Durbin expressed was true, even if that sentiment was something that would work if both parties agreed to it, Brett Kavanaugh doesn't agree to that. And he made that perfectly clear during his confirmation hearing, when he had the chance to testify on his own behalf. Trying to cooperate with someone who doesn't want to cooperate is not cooperation. It is allowing yourself to be coerced. And this isn't a one-off thing. This isn't just a frequent thing. This is the basis for the relationship between the modern Democrats and the modern Republicans. Republicans are outright full-throated fascists. They frequently and gleefully do fascism whenever they have the opportunity to do so. And the Democrats are crooks and goons who believe wholeheartedly that cooperating and capitulating to fascists is the lesser of two evils. The greater evil, in their eyes, being any kind of systemic change that would reduce the power of corporations or the government. And I feel like I shouldn't have to explain why having one party that are fascists and another party that are fascist collaborators is a problem. And yet here we are. Let me explain, since I'm going to have to. If the only options you have are fascists and fascist collaborators, then the fascists are going to win every time. You know the old saying, right? If you have 10 people sitting at a table, and one of those people is a Nazi, then for all intents and purposes, you have 10 Nazis sitting at a table. It is that easy to understand. Getting rid of the fascists isn't enough. If you don't get rid of the people supporting the fascists, then you're not going to get rid of the fascists. And if you're supporting the people who are collaborating with the fascists, then you're still supporting the fascists. Vitally, that is true whether you mean to do so or not. Fascists do not collaborate unless they come out on top. And the goal of fascism is wanton, needless cruelty. That is the goal. It is not an unintended consequence. It is not an unfortunate happenstance. It is the goal. That is why, for example, they never got rid of the concentration camps for children. They just renamed them. And if the choices you have in the system under which you operate are fascism or fascism with extra steps, that's not a choice. That's just fascism. And you know what? Just in case you think I'm blowing smoke, let's talk about a really pertinent example of how Republicans use cruelty to advance the fascist agenda. Gun crimes. Shives chose not to do this, and that's not a criticism, just a statement. I understand why he chose not to do that. 20,000 people a year being killed by any means ought to be reason for pause. If that many people were being killed by, I don't know, orgasms, then we would have a moratorium on sex until we figured out what the fuck was going on. That so many people are being killed by gun violence, and nothing is being done, is appalling in and of itself. So yeah, I'm gonna say it out loud. Black on black crime. Black people make up not only a wildly disproportionate number of the victims of gun violence, but also a wildly disproportionate amount of the perpetrators of gun violence. This is for various reasons related entirely to white America's long history of oppressing and subjugating non-white people. And I believe that it is at least a little bit irresponsible not to mention that when talking about violent gun crime. Not just because those are the people who we ought to be trying to help, but because unless we acknowledge that, we won't be able to see the whole picture of why a lack of gun control is so important to the GOP platform. Because it's about the cruelty. The GOP does not look at this problem and say, well, what do? They have... I wouldn't call them solutions, but the GOP does. And those solutions, at least as far as memory can provide, have been to cut social services, to increase police presence, that is, state violence, and to roll back civil rights. The GOP looks at this problem, and then they think to themselves, how do we spin this to our advantage? And then they do that in the cruelest way possible, by perpetuating the very violence that they claim they are trying to solve. And if people on the left aren't talking about black-on-black crime, aren't actively talking about how to fix that problem, then not only are we not talking about how to fix the biggest piece of the gun violence puzzle, but we're also just letting the GOP use that problem to benefit themselves. Point being, the GOP is not ambivalent to gun violence. They actively perpetuate it because they actively benefit from it. And if people are serious about ending violent gun crime, then black-on-black crime is going to need to be the primary problem that we solve. And more often than not, people who are serious about ending gun violence start there. By way of an example, Eddie Pratt Jr., this guy. When COVID first broke out, Eddie here went to Peoria and started arranging a ceasefire between criminal organizations that are responsible for most of the gun violence there. Eddie is to people like me what Audie Murphy is to people like John Wayne. The real deal. I need to stress here, above and beyond anything else, I'm not just offended at Shive's analysis because I think it's wrong, although I do believe that it's wrong for reasons I hope I've been able to articulate. And I'm not offended at his analysis and proposed solution because I think that they're shallow, although I do think that they're shallow for reasons I hope I have been able to articulate. I'm offended because his shallow analysis perpetuates the very problem that he claims that he's trying to solve. I am offended, and I'll admit it, a little angry, because the solution that he's proposing would actively make the problem worse. I want to fix the problem of gun violence, just as much as Shives does. And I believe that he does want to fix the problem of gun violence. I am not here to question Shives' conviction, and I don't want you to walk away from this video, close this video out, thinking that that's the point that I'm trying to make. And another point that I want to make. I am not saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it. I am not telling anyone to descend into apathy. I am not apathetic to this problem. When I say that the GOP are fascists who politically benefit from gun crime, that is not expressing apathy. When I say that the GOP are using gun violence as an excuse to strip civil rights from the victims of that gun violence, that is not expressing apathy. And there's a direct comparison that I want to make here. When Steve Shives says that the people who pass these constitutional carry laws are ghouls that do not care about the tens of thousands of lives that are quashed as a result of these laws that they keep passing, he is not expressing apathy. He and I are expressing contempt, a contempt that has been well earned. I've spoken before about how the idea that people are politically apathetic is uniquely harmful, not just to our political discourse, but to politics as a whole. This is especially true in a modern context where contempt is being mistaken for apathy, and that contempt is held not just by ordinary people, but by elected officials as well. Politicians are not your friends, and some of them hate you. And even the ones that don't hate you aren't going to listen to you because they have big money donors that they have to listen to first. I would know I'm the guy who tries to talk to these people. My bona fides are at the top of the video. And I tell you that I am not apathetic because I am not here to tell you to do nothing. Politicians might not listen to you, but they do listen to someone. The key is to find out who those people are and tell them to go along with our goals or shut the fuck up. Let's take gun violence as an example, again, not just because it's pertinent, but because it's really easy. The National Rifle Association's headquarters is at 11250 Waples Mill Road, Fairfax, Virginia, zip code 22030. That's not a secret, that's not me hacking their website, that's on fucking Wikipedia. And instead of asking, I don't know, Joe Manchin to support common sense gun reform, you can have yourselves a rally in front of the NRA headquarters and tell the NRA to support common sense gun reform or shut the hell up. Then you do it again and again and again and again and again every day until they get the fucking message. We can actually go further than that. According to Wikipedia, the manufacturers responsible for the most commonly used guns and incidents of gun violence are Smith & Wesson, Raven Arms, Sturm Ruger & Co., and the Remington Arms Company, with the most common kind of gun used in incidents of gun violence being a Smith & Wesson chambered in .38 special ammunition. These corporations have corporate offices. Go to those corporate offices and tell the people who work there that if Congress is not going to enact common sense gun reform, then you are going to expect these companies to do something about gun violence themselves. Whether that thing that they do is manufacturing less of those guns, or manufacturing less of that ammunition. And then you go there again and again and again and again until they get the fucking message. You could even go a step further than that, hypothetically. Do you know where Wayne LaPierre lives? Do you know where Mark Smith, the CEO of Smith & Wesson Arms Company, lives? I do. It wasn't difficult to find. And yeah, harassing a private citizen is, at least ostensibly, illegal. But let's say that you are convinced, for some reason, that interfering with the day-to-day operations of corporations that are complicit in the deaths of tens of thousands of people is immoral, and that you have to go through official channels. I don't know why you would think that, but okay, I try to be accommodating. Diversity of tactics is an anarchist thing. What I would say to you is that if you are going to insist on doing politics in a politically correct manner, go to local political branch offices and demonstrate there. I don't mean the local offices of whatever politician you have a crab in your maw about. I mean go find your local DNC office or RNC office, your county office, and go do a demonstration there. If politicians won't listen to you, then go around them and speak directly to the people who decide whether or not those politicians get to run for office. That might make them sweat. And, I can envision someone saying this kind of strategy seems a little bit too aggressive. It seems mean, right? You're going to these people's offices, you're ruining their day, and for what? Well, I'll tell you what. Gun violence killed 21,000 people last year, and 20,000 people the year before that, and then 15,000 people the year before that. In the face of that much death and bloodshed, I don't think it matters how much a handful of interns are inconvenienced. All things said and done, I'm an anarchist. I believe genuinely that any system that even contemplates the possibility of human life being consumed on that scale deserves to be wholly and utterly destroyed by any means possible, by any instruments available, by any people willing to put in the work. That these systems are not only allowed, but willfully perpetuate this ghastly consumption of human life for no good reason is a moral offense that I do not possess the language to quantify. If I tried, I would just be screaming and punching a wall for 6 hours. Here's the thing, at the bottom of it. The people who benefit from gun violence are not going to tell you how to actually affect policy. Not the politicians, not the corporations. Relying on them in any regard is a catastrophically foolish act. Not just in regards to gun violence, but in regards to any number of things. Police violence, oil pipelines, taxes, teaching creationism in schools. And we know this because ordinary people keep interacting with that political system in exactly the ways that they are told to interact with it, and they keep losing. Maybe we should stop doing that. Maybe, instead of trying to interact with these opaque and hostile systems and getting actually less than nothing done, we should treat these systems like they are actively hostile towards ordinary people. Maybe we should have the mindset that if these systems are not working for us, then they are working against us, and maybe we should treat them like they're working against us. Because, let me let you in on a little secret. They are working against us. There are two teams, but it's not Team Red and Team Blue. It's not a donkey and an elephant. There's Team White, who you can call the bourgeoisie, or oligarchs, or corpos, or just the billionaire class. And there's Team Black, who you can call the proletariat, or proles, or regular-ass people, or the working class. And the way that our systems are set up is that the only way for Team White to survive is to gobble up as much money, as much resources, and ultimately as much power as they possibly can. The way we fix this problem, the way that you solve this systemic problem, is not by playing with the rules laid out. You're not going to fix this problem with a nice clean match. The way that we fix these problems, not just gun violence, but electoral dysfunction, and wealth inequality, and yes, even creationism in schools, is by figuring out who is playing by what rules. When we have done that, we can confront the system, we can play the game in ways that the game could not account for. You don't win by choosing not to play. That's apathy. That's death. You win the game. You fix the system by playing by entirely different rules. This is not just a platform. This is a hammer.